Welcome to the Small Business Sisterhood podcast. I'm your host, Pepper Makepeace, an online business strategist for female solopreneurs and side hustlers, and founder of the Small Business Sisterhood, an online membership community serving small business owners in the first stages of business. Join me as I go behind the scenes with female entrepreneurs, revealing the struggles, strategies, and inspiring stories of these amazing women. If you're interested in connecting with like-minded women, learning effective business strategies from the experts, and being a part of a mastermind group that helps you grow your business, check us out at smallbusinesssisterhood.com. Today we're talking to Stephanie Pollock. Stephanie is a leadership coach fiercely devoted to helping women entrepreneurs develop the leadership and business skills needed to go pro with their dreams, stepping into spotlights and revenue streams they so richly deserve. She's the host of Beyond Pro podcast, a top 40 under 40 changemaker, and the creator of the Leadership League Mastermind, a leadership accelerator for women in business. Thank you, Stephanie, so much for being on the podcast. I know it's been challenging getting us together, but it's a pleasure and an honor to have you on the podcast, so thank you for being here.
Likewise, I'm pleased to be here, and that you and I, both techie people, still managed to get through all the hiccups we've had, and we are coming together, so yeah. I'm pleased to be here.
So tell everybody a little bit about you and your business.
Sure. I am a business and leadership coach, and I work primarily with women in business, and my role has shifted over the years. In the beginning, it was more focused on people at the early stages of business. Now I'm looking more at how I can support them in their leadership journey inside of their business. And so what I mean by that is, there's tons of things you need to be focusing on as a business owner, whether it's marketing or sales or development or course creation or client experience and all of those things. And those are, of course, instrumental to running a successful business. But in my mind, to really create something that's sustainable and successful over the long haul, you really need to be stepping up as a leader inside of your business, not just the technician of what you do. And that's really where I've been focusing my attention, is coaching people and offering training services and masterminds and such to help people step into that leadership role so that they can have a really clear, compelling message, so that they can amplify their voice, they can communicate powerfully, they can make wise, smart decisions for their business, they can take care of themselves in the process so that they can keep that momentum going over the long haul, and show up courageously and bravely inside of their business on a regular basis.
That is so important, all of the things that you just said, and I think that when people are first starting out, it's kind of that new exciting thing that's happening, and then it's like the burnout sets in and you can't sustain it and it falls apart. Like, that's a really common scenario that I've experienced with clients and fellow entrepreneurs, and we all need that so much.
Yeah, I mean, when you first start out a business, you have energy and passion to spare, right? Like you're really invested in getting something off the ground. I mean, I remember vaguely, it was so long ago, but when I first started, I think you and I started around the same time, Pepper, but you just had this energy of like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to make it happen. You didn't mind putting in the longer hours, and it was just kind of like, for me, I was just soaking up as much as I could to learn about what it would really take to grow a business and create a company, and then after a few years, you're like, okay, I have clients, I've done this or that, I'm blogging fairly regularly, or whatever channels you're using to spread the word. And then either you kind of hit a plateau because you're not sure how to get to that next level because the things you've been doing are great, but they're not enough to create a next level stage of growth, or you're starting to burn out, or you're starting to lose passion for what you're doing probably because you're starting to burn out, or, you just kind of are feeling a little bit, rudderless, like you're not sure where to head, or you've got to go into growth mode, and to go into growth mode, it's going to require you to show up in a way you haven't yet shown up, right? So it's one thing when you are, running your business as whether it's a side hustle or a part-time or a full-time thing, and it's just you. It's another when you start taking on, contractors or employees, or you look to scale the business, or, you're in that growth mode. You're going to have to show up differently to really lead that company as opposed to just run it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell me about like how you work with people? I know you said masterminds, some training. Tell me how, like, specifically that you work with people and where they are specifically in their businesses at that point.
I do still work with people who are starting up their business, but they have to be really committed to kind of the bigger game around what they're creating. Right. And a lot of our work is around that how are they going to show up as the business owner. But in terms of, the main ways people can work with me, I still do one-on-one coaching because I know that that's a really powerful way for people to make progress. There's lots, and I certainly have run a lot of online training programs, but at some point you just need somebody to work out with you in terms of the nuances related to your business challenges and opportunities. So I do one-to-one coaching in, like a short 4-month spurt and then a longer year-long engagement for people who really want to partner with me to be, a witness, a champion, a catalyst, and somebody who's helping guide them and mentor them through their own leadership development inside of their business. So that's one way. And then I'm starting a mastermind. I've run masterminds in the past, but this is a new iteration of it that's kicking off at the end of this month in June. And it is really a leadership mastermind. So it's not a place to necessarily, talk about what kind of webinar service should I use or what should my email opt-in be, but rather look at what are the leadership capacities that I need to develop to grow my confidence and also have a greater sense of clarity in terms of where I'm taking my business. Because that's really what's at the heart of it for me around leadership. And when I say leadership, I don't mean that kind of like, old white guy in the C-suite office in the corner in the company. I mean, I've been in those environments. I've worked in corporate. So I know that. And that's not knocking it, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about that this is only relevant to people who manage other people, because it's not. Even if you are a solo entrepreneur, leadership is still something you need to be paying attention to because you are running a company. And to really be able to make the impact that I know most people in my audience, and I'm sure yours too, Pepper, want to make, that really does require a level of personal leadership to show up to the table. So my goal is to help develop that leadership confidence, have really great clarity, because I'm a firm believer that if you don't know where you're headed, then, you're just going to end up somewhere. You have to have some sense of direction, and then also develop those capacities. And what I mean by capacities are the skills. And I am a big believer in outsourcing things that aren't your strengths, whether it's technology or marketing or some of those kind of things. But when it comes to leadership skills, and by that I mean communication skills, decision-making skills, navigating criticism and feedback, and giving feedback as well to other people, things like that, stepping it up with a kind of a leaderful mindset around, not getting sucked into all the fear and the imposter and the comparison and all that stuff. Those are capacities that we have to build, as human beings, but particularly if we are charged with and we have sought out running our own company, those are really important, because you're not in the place where you're just in a job and you've got somebody else to make those decisions for you, or to tell you what to do, or to help you navigate a tricky situation or create a buffer for you. You're it, right?
Right.
So to me, it really is about understanding what those gaps are in our own capacities and where we need to strengthen them. And so the mastermind is really designed to be both essentially an incubator for developing those capacities, then also to kind of expand the network, because I believe that, when you get to a certain level in your business, it can start to feel a little bit lonely, because a lot of us work from home. Not all of us have employees. And then, you're making all the decisions. You're just bouncing it around in your head a million times. And that's where a lot of those fears can kick in. Whereas if you have a network of people who are on that same path with you, they can be a source of mirroring or feedback or challenge or support or, whatever it is. So I'm really excited about that, because it'll be part training. It'll be part masterminding, a little bit of coaching as well. And then I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to actually practice their leadership by giving a presentation to the whole group as a way to kind of demonstrate their own development and learning and put them in the spotlight where they deserve to be.
That sounds amazing. And I think that, all the things that you're saying, the skills that we need to have nobody really talks about that when you first start out because,
No.
you don't realize how difficult it can be to make decisions about, whether or not to do a program or, whether or not to hire somebody or, there's all these decisions that have to be made almost daily that nobody really talks about the skills necessary to make good decisions. And like even that one piece alone seems like a really big deal. So I think that's amazing, the work that you're doing. I think it's very necessary.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, it's the area that people don't focus on because when you're in business, you're often looking toward, the bright, shiny objects or even just the things that need to keep your business running, like the operational side of things, like whether it's, a content marketing strategy through, your blog or podcasting or video or Facebook or Twitter, whatever, those kind of things, whether it is just creating really good offers with the right pricing and suite of packages that you can offer your clients and customers. We spend so much time there. And if you spend any time in the online space, then you are inundated with advice and offers and support around that, which is great because when you need to learn that, you need to learn that, right? Mm-hmm. Like those are really important things. So I'm not discounting that at all. But if you don't have an underlying sense of confidence and clarity and the skills, then all those things are just things. Like you won't action them in the way that will get you the results you want, or you won't action them at all because you'll be afraid, or you'll be, like I'm sure you've seen this too, Pepper, with people you've worked with, where it's just like ping pong, right? Like I'm over here and then I'm over here and then I'm over here and maybe I should do this and Facebook ads, no webinar, like it's just this game and we can spend all our time in that, or we can spend all our time just servicing the clients that we don't ever come up for air to kind of go like, what do I be needing to be developing to be able to continue to move my business forward and maybe even take it to another level where it can have, greater impact with the people that you serve. It's not really a thing that's talked about that much, particularly in early stages of business. And I think that that's a little bit of I think that's a problem, frankly, because
I would agree.
Like if more new stage entrepreneurs put a little bit of energy there, and not all the energy, because I get that they're trying to get something started and there's so much to do at that beginning stage, whether it's branding and, website development and ideal client identification, all those kind of things. But the leadership component, if there's no eye on that at all, you will hit a block eventually, right, where then you're like, I have no idea how to navigate this. I'm not ready for this. Or when your platform grows and you start to really show up and get some traction, and then you're suddenly terrified to be seen or to get feedback. And then you kind of, retreat. Then, those kind of things have a lasting impact on your business.
So true. Have you always done this? And I kind of know this answer already, but I took your marketing class back in, what was that, 2009?
Yes.
So obviously you haven't always done this. Tell us a little bit about what you used to do and how you kind of evolved to this space you're in now.
Okay, so this is like my story, and there's an underlying lesson here in all of this. Okay. So pre-starting my business, I worked in nonprofit, and then I worked for a corporation. And I had always taken on leadership roles, from early, like since I was a little kid. And I always had an interest in women's leadership development. So I was taking courses on that. When I was in the corporate environment, I was spearheading like an internal women's committee. I was running a very successful, part of the organizing committee for a women's leadership forum. So this was not new, this whole concept of leadership. I had taken a leadership development program. I was, getting kind of accolades for leadership. And then I started my business and I just decided not to have anything to do with that, because that makes a lot of sense, right? Because I just couldn't find the connection. And so what happened is, I left the corporate environment and kind of left all that behind, started out my business first just as communications consulting, because that's what I'm trained to do. And then I got my coach training, and I, eventually kind of put those two together to take my business experience mixed with the coaching to become a business coach, because that's where I saw there was an opportunity. And in my mind at that early stage, I couldn't make the connection around where leadership fit in, where that leadership message fit into that. And I didn't want to work, I didn't want to be a coach for, back in the corporate environment. I was so burnt out on that. I wanted nothing to do with that at the time. So I just was like, well, okay, there's no fit, so I'll go business related. And that's, probably where you and I got connected through the Prime for Profits, Making It Big in Business course that I ran, which was more about kind of like what it takes to build a business. Like it was all the stuff I talked about earlier. That's kind of how things went. So my lesson in that is, don't discount the things that you naturally have aptitude toward, see if you can find a way to integrate those. Now, if they don't fit, they don't fit, but it's just, I've seen that so many times where, 5 years in, somebody would be like, why did I not pay attention to these things that I had been doing my entire career? Like, I just dropped that when it came to my business. So, really look for clues and mine for assets that you already have and skills you already have and how you can bring that to your business. So then from there, it was just a gradual thing. I was working with clients, and what I noticed from a client perspective is, while we would certainly, and still to this day, we'll talk about things like, what's going to be their content strategy, what marketing channels are they going to use, or planning. I talk a lot about planning. The undercurrent of all of that really was leadership, was, the people that were succeeding really well were the people that were able to navigate kind of owning their own leadership role inside the company in terms of doing what needed to be done, in terms of really keeping a higher level vision for their company in mind, and who were building those skills and capacities along the way, rather than just getting mired in kind of the day-to-day busy work grind that most of us can easily fall into. So it's only been, I would say, in the past, maybe year that I've been more overt about using that word and saying that message. And I'm still kind of testing that out around how it's going to resonate for entrepreneurs, because it's not a word most entrepreneurs tend to use. It's a very corporate word, but to me, that really is what the heart of it is.
Definitely. I love that you kind of let all of that go for a little while, because I have similar experience with that. And I think so many of us do that, where you have all these skills and then you're like, well, I'm going to do this, and that doesn't have anything to do with that. And and it's so funny because, as an outside person, you can see it. You can see the connection. You can see where it would play in. But I think internally it's just so hard to, especially when there's that kind of feeling of burnout with corporate or, that kind of stuff. Like, you really want to separate it because it's painful sometimes. So it's an odd process with kind of bringing all of those things kind of back in. And I did that with like kind of the technology piece. I really stayed away from like helping people with technology. And then I was like, well, that's dumb, because that's a big thing for me. Like, that's what I've always done. And so why do I have to not do that? And then it came back around. So
Well, exactly, right? And it is understanding that the things that are actual strengths for us are often the things we most overlook because we just take them for granted.
Right.
Or the way we were using them, isn't a direct correlation to what we're doing now. So then it's just like, we discount them altogether. So, another example of this is like my educational background and my work background is largely in communications. And I didn't want to start a communications agency. Like, I was really clear on that. I didn't want to be doing that kind of work for people. I did it when I first started just to get some, money in the door. But that was not the long-term plan. But it was only like, 2 months ago that I launched a product that was around, giving people some language and some scripts for being able to communicate more powerfully in difficult business conversations. That was a no-brainer for me that I could have given on day one, because that was just, but I took it for granted because those kind of things come really easily for me, writing those kind of messages. Maybe not the conversation itself is always easy, but knowing what to say in them is fairly easy. And so I just kind of took it for granted, right? And then finally it was like, what? Come on, Steph, just really, because I would have friends or mastermind partners that would be like, I wouldn't know what to say. This is not easy for me. And, one friend says, I have a client who Googles scripts on a regular basis because she doesn't know what to do. So my point is, just don't take those things for granted, right? And if the way you did it in your previous iteration of your work life, this is particularly for new stage entrepreneurs or those that are just kind of contemplating it. If the way you did it before, doesn't align with the way you want to do it now, that's fine. You can take the core of it. So whether it is the core strengths or core skills or a combination of those. And then what you do is you just look at how can I re-engineer these and position these and message these in a way for the audience I now want to serve. And trusting that those core pieces for you can be really vital and valuable to the people that you want to serve because they come naturally, because you have those skills in it. And so not to discount that. Even if it's not kind of the core of the business that you're running, what can you take from before that you can now leverage into the new?
Well, and I have a perfect personal experience with how that kind of plays out, if you don't mind a little story.
No.
So my training in university, my major was Japanese language and literature, and with a teaching certificate on top of that. I used to work with Japanese companies. Like, that was my corporate gig. It's like I worked in Japanese companies with Japanese people and other Japanese companies. And so when I quit that, it's like, well, that doesn't have anything to do with what I want to do. But I have all this training on how to teach and how to build lesson plans and, how to work with people as a teacher-student relationship, and those things as an entrepreneur are invaluable. Like, they're serious things that you can absolutely incorporate in how you run your business. But in the beginning, I was like, well, that doesn't have anything to do with it. But now it's much more a piece of how I think and how I work. I let that part come back. Like, when I'm planning a course or something that I'm building, like, obviously I'm using those skills, and that's normal.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that. That's so true. And I mean, and how many other people listening to this that are further along maybe have had that same experience, right? Like, here you've got this really depth of knowledge around teaching, which is such a fundamental skill to online business making, right? But you're like, no, that doesn't fit,
teaching.
Yeah, exactly. And yet the way that you were teaching isn't going to be the way you teach now, in terms of, like, it's not an equal, like, just exchange, but you take the core of that and then use that in a way that works for what you're doing now, which is awesome. Yeah, but it takes us a while to get there, right? And that's the thing. Unless we're really conscious about it. Exactly. So, yeah. Exactly. Like, just really quickly, I still have it. When I was debating leaving my corporate job, I hired a life coach because I was like, I'm not sure how to navigate this. And one of the exercises she had me do was create just a brain dump, because I'm an ideas person. I have more ideas than I know what to do with. So she said, just write a list of everything. Like, the sky's the limit. Don't censor. Don't ask how you're going to make it happen. Just write down every single thing you are remotely interested in doing. So I did, and I still have that list because it's always a good reminder. And, I ended up narrowing it down into kind of 3 buckets. And one of them was women's leadership. I had a huge section on that. Like, I identified that right out of the gate. And yet something told me, no, I can't do, it was either I can't do that, or it was like, this new audience isn't going to want that, or whatever it is. I didn't have the foresight to be able to say, this is a really core part of who you are, and this is really important to you, and you're really good at this. How can you align this with your work now? It doesn't have to look like the corporate gig style of it, but how could you bring it to the table? And instead I just went, no. And I just, but it's still like, it just kills me because I pulled out that piece of paper a year ago and I'm like, oh, really? Like, seriously? I could have not saved myself because it's all learning and nothing's wasted. And I'm really proud of the work I did in the meantime. So it's not like I hated what I was doing. Right. I didn't at all. But it was just kind of like, oh, this is a full circle moment if ever there was one, right? Like, and did I need to take 10 years to get that lesson? Maybe not. Well, I think we compartmentalize things as entrepreneurs, and sometimes I see people, and I've done this personally, where you just leave out like whole pieces of yourself and they don't get incorporated into your business. But like the leadership part, like it sounds like that's kind of just part of who you are, like, and have always been. And I'm sure you were doing it in your own business, just not teaching others how to do it. So yeah, exactly. So tell me about your first year, if you can remember. I know for both of us, it's been a while. You were 2008 too, correct? Yeah, March 2008 is when I incorporated. Yeah, so what happened for me is I decided to quit my job. I did not do a whole bunch of pre-planning around, building this really significant nest egg or having a really clear plan. I had a friend who said, oh yeah, you can easily make $200,000 in the first year. I did it. I'm like, great, okay. That didn't happen, just for the record. Not even close. Great advice. Yeah, I know. Ugh. What she failed to mention, and I love her dearly, but what she failed to mention was that she had already honed her own process that she could take into companies and offer. I was going out in the early stages. So yeah, to back up, I started that first year primarily offering communications consulting work and right back to the company that I had left and to nonprofits and other corporations. So I was writing a ton of communications pieces, whether it was fundraising related material, campaign related material, or, my previous background was in community investment. So I was doing like CSR, corporate social responsibility type of stuff. That was another piece I left behind for the record, is all my active community engagement part that was really important to me. Yeah, I tabled that for almost 10 years too. So this is not sounding well on my part, but yeah, like these pieces that were part of that life, I just kind of parked. But anyway, so my first year, it was really a freelancing business more than anything. Like I wasn't really building a company at that stage. What I knew was I wasn't ready yet. I knew I wanted to coach. I wasn't quite ready to jump into that because I wanted to get trained. So I was doing the communications consulting. So what happened is I incorporated in March, I quit in May, and then 2 months later I found out I was pregnant with our first child. Ha!
What a year.
Oh yeah, it was nuts. And I started the business, a large part of why I started it was, well, there were numerous reasons, but one of it was knowing that the gig I was doing, which was I was going to parties and events and all the time. Like it was a high profile, really exciting, fun job, but I knew it was not sustainable when we had kids, and we knew we were kind of ready to start that fairly soon. So I'm like, I'll start this business, I'll get a good year under my belt, and then we'll have a kid. Again, didn't happen that way.
You got a good 2 months under your belt.
Yeah, I had a whole whopping 2 months. Yeah, that was really helpful. So that first year I was, basically freelancing my communication style. I was, growing a baby, and I was also going through coach training at the same time. Yeah. So it was a whirlwind. Like I finished my coach training, 8.5 months pregnant. Then my son was born. And then, I was kind of doing a little bit of both. I was doing some communications consulting, and then I was starting to get my feet wet in the coaching. And at that stage, because of the training I did, through the Coaches Training Institute, it was more life coaching. I hadn't yet determined that I was going to really bring the business piece in. So I was, testing the waters with life coaching, quickly realizing that wasn't really for me. But that's kind of what that first year and a half looked like before I really made the decision to focus it more on kind of the business entrepreneurial side of things. I don't know what you want to know about that. I mean, that's what happened. I don't know if you have any specific questions around what that was like or like what your thoughts are there, but I'm happy to answer anything.
So looking back at that first year, like what, from a business perspective, like would you have done anything different, or were there any things that were surprising about that first year that you weren't expecting other than getting pregnant?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that aside, okay, so a couple of things come to mind. One thing I think I wouldn't change if I had to go back, and this is nuanced for my situation, so it's not going to be the same for everybody, but it's just worth mentioning, I think, which is that unless you have things all ready to go, all set up, you have a really nice kitty of cash to help kind of bide you through the next 6 to 12 months while you get your business off the ground and figure all that out. Keeping your foot in the previous door can be really helpful. So I do not regret, pregnancy aside, I would have still done it the same way, which was doing that communications contracting work, because quite literally on my last day, the next day I had work. And that took a lot of financial stress off. Not completely, because I still had to deliver on that work. I still had to find more of that work. But it was a much easier way to jump into getting enough coaching clients to pay the bills from day one was just not a realistic thing. Right. So having something that I could rely on was really important, because what it allowed me to do at that stage was take the coach training and start to think about who I was going to focus my message toward from the new business perspective. So not the freelancing side, but the coaching business. Mm-hmm. So it gave me a little bit of breathing room, which was really helpful because it took some of that stress off. Now, in the same breath, what also happened, and this is a bit of a, I think this really comes down to somebody's own sense of tolerance for risk and security and what their current dynamic was. My husband was, we both came from oil and gas. My husband was still working in oil and gas. It's not that he could fully support us, but we were not going to lose our home if I didn't make money in the first month kind of thing. We were in that. But we were a 2-income family, so I did need to be making money. And so one of the things for me that was helpful, just because of the way I'm wired and motivated, was that not having that huge nest egg to rely on forced me to get creative, and it forced me to get out there. If I had known that I had 12 months to kind of like a launch pad to make this happen, it would have taken off some of the financial worry, but at the same time, I think knowing my personality, I would have just procrastinated. So finding your own edge around that to be able to actually get the work done, because, I've worked with enough people to know that those that don't have to do the work, often don't do the work because it's not, and that's no judgment. It's just kind of like their drive isn't quite the same because it doesn't have to all work out. They don't have to go put themselves out there to get clients if they don't want to, if that feels uncomfortable. So that was, that was part of it. Yeah. The mistake I made, one of the mistakes I made, is I spent too much time and too much money on branding related stuff in that first year. And that was really driven by kind of having a communications background and having a friend who I'd worked with previously for the YMCA. She was the graphic designer. I was kind of the communications person. And so I knew what was possible from a design point, and that was really important to me. So I was having her create these fancy business cards and the website and the one-pagers and the worksheets before I really was clear on what my message was, and where I was taking things. And luckily I didn't spend, a ridiculous amount because we were friends and she gave me a really good deal, but it was just time. I should have been spending time talking to people, honing my message, coaching and getting practice, really doing the work before I was spending all the time kind of on all that like back end branding related stuff. That was not, and that's one thing I always recommend to people is, you want to get a basic website up, but don't spend all your money on that until you're really clear, because it will change. Like I started my coaching business when I quickly identified I wanted to work business. This might have been before you and I met, Pepper, but I started it around mompreneurs. Did we know each other then? Probably not, hey?
No, I don't remember that.
That was a short window. So I was focusing on mompreneurs, and then I quickly realized, like literally 3 to 6 months in, I was like, no, I don't, this isn't the message I want to sing. It's like, I work with a lot of women who have kids. I had a new child at home, which is, I think, where that kind of came from. Mm-hmm. But I didn't want to talk about the mom stuff. I just wanted to talk about the business stuff. Mm-hmm. So, but I had already invested in getting headers created and, a whole website around that. So that was an expensive mistake. So if you can just kind of hold back on some of that and just kind of create like a minimum viable website, right, knowing that stuff is going to change, that's going to save you a lot of energy. And truthfully, it's not the most important thing. What the most important thing is that you go out there and you meet people and you get work so you can test your approach or your process or your whatever it is that you do and get more work and get money coming in the door that you can then reinvest back into the business.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I did the same sort of thing. But instead of money, I spent time because I was doing it myself.
Right. Yeah.
I'm like teaching myself how to code and like I think I redesigned my website like every other month, and it was ridiculous. Like I spent way too much time on it because I couldn't get clear, and I didn't take the time to get clear before I started designing. Yeah, I hear ya. That first year, like that's all I did. It seemed like I got a couple of clients, and then I just played on my website.
Yeah, I know.
And changed my logo like 8 times.
Yeah, and we think that that's actually doing the work, and
right.
It's not, right? Like eventually those things need to happen, but that's not where the focus should be, especially in an early stage of business. And
no, it's not the foundation.
No, it's not, and we all do it. So many people do it, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Don't do it, people.
Yeah, don't do it, people. It's a waste of time and money, please.
Please. Like,
yeah.
Wait.
Yeah. And there's so many great options now for, a baseline website that even weren't around when I started, right? I think mine was on our, my internet service providers that, like, I don't know how she created it. Now there are these, whether it's Squarespace or just even some beautiful, like I use the Divi template with, or theme with, from Elegant Themes for WordPress, where they're really drag and drop, where you don't need that level of customization. You can do a lot of those things and create, really great looking sites until you're clear on that and not spend a ton of money or a ton of time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so like there's so much more available even now than there was.
Oh yeah. Well, my first website was an HTML site, and then I finally gave in to WordPress, and then of course that was a whole new
learning curve. Yeah.
And it wasn't that straightforward back then.
No, it wasn't.
So yeah, so many more options now for just really beautiful. Like some people have really gorgeous websites, and it's really drag and drop and no big deal. So
Yeah, there are so many ways to do that. Because I know for me at that stage, I knew that if I didn't have something that looked professional, I would feel like an imposter. Yeah. So I don't want to discount that because I know how that can feel like. It makes you feel like you're kind of going pro, right? Like you've got a real website rather than some sketch thing or nothing at all. But at this stage, there are just so many tools available for you to do that at such a low level cost and investment of time and money. You don't need the logo. Like you really don't even need a logo. You can just,
put your name up there.
Exactly. And, you get a couple of nice pictures of you taken so you have something, professional. I think that is important, but you don't need the whole big photo shoot. You could just get one or two nice pictures taken of you and, invest in a bit of, nice stock imagery from a place you like that doesn't look like what everybody else has. Right. And, pick a color palette and you're off to the races, really. Right. It's not. And Pinterest now, I mean, God, there's like a gazillion ideas. You can just put in color palette and pick a whole suite and a font palette. Like all of that stuff is so much more available. Whereas, even back in, 10 years ago, it was like you were struggling to figure that out yourself.
Absolutely. So what is, if you had to boil it down to one piece of advice that you had for new entrepreneurs, like in that first year or just starting out, what would it be?
One, Pepper? You're killing me.
Half a dozen? I don't know, whatever you want.
No. I'm just, okay, can I give 3?
Of course.
I'll be fast.
No.
Okay. Sorry, that's totally going against the rule. Talk about focus. Okay, one we already touched on, which is really do an inventory of your skills, your strengths, your values, and your interests, and don't discount that because they'll be the most useful assets that you have as you build that first iteration of your business. So the more aligned it is to you, the greater chance you have to succeed. So it doesn't mean you have to bring all of those to the table, but have a really good look at them, do an audit and an inventory and look at how they can translate into whatever you're bringing because those will be the things that sustain you over the long haul. When you're clear on what's important to you and where you really shine, you are going to be much better positioned for the kind of success rather than kind of looking to what, people in your space do or what other people are doing or what you think you should do. I know this sounds like, such common advice, but it's common because it's true, right? So really, spend some time there. So that's one. The second one we've touched on, which is about the leadership piece, which is, really holding a bigger mindset for your business. So unless you are just doing a side hustle or this is a part-time labor of love and, all the power to you if that's your thing, that's totally fine. But if you really do want to build a company, you need to embrace that you are leading that company. And even if you're a team of one, even if it's just you, it's operating from an owner's perspective and a leader perspective, not like a technician's perspective. So let's say you're a graphic designer. Your business is not, it's not just about being a graphic designer. That's the technician side. And if you just focus on that, you're essentially a freelancer still, right? It's really being, I am a business owner who offers graphic design services. So it's just the mindset shift around that and then how you're going to show up. And then the third one, especially for the newbies in business, is understand you are going to try on a lot of different things and you're going to have to iterate and practice and put yourself out there. I say this to my clients all of the time that are at that stage. You will not figure this all out by staring at your computer screen. I promise you that.
Darn it.
Get out and yeah, I know. I wish. You have to get out and do the work. And not everybody wants to hear that because that's more vulnerable, right? But until you are actually working with people, let's just assume you're primarily a service-based business, until you are actually working with people and having some feedback and understanding what their challenges are and what they aspire to, you're only going to get so far. You can make some educated guesses, you can talk to some people and get some kind of focus group type of information, but until you're in the trenches doing things, you really won't have that clarity. Where I see people getting stuck, fussing around their messaging over and over and over again. Well, am I this? Am I that? Do I want to say this? I'm not sure it's this. Stop, stop. Give yourself a time limit. Say, I'm going to do this for one more day and then stop and then go out and try and find some clients. It is through that work, through the actual act of serving, that your message will become clearer. You will not just have this massive light bulb that's here it is. It is all laid out for you. Now go forward. Like it just doesn't work that way. So just kind of really trying on the idea of everything's an experiment. You just got to practice. You got to get out there. Then you make adjustments and you just keep doing that. And for the first couple of years, there's a lot of that going on, which is why I said don't spend a whole bunch of money and time on things that are kind of like more static, because you're going to iterate so many times before you actually land on something that feels really good. And quite frankly, you're going to change that again. Like I've had numerous iterations of my business. So yeah, those are my three. Sorry.
No, those are really good and really important. And I can identify with all of them.
So can I. Not like I had this down pat. Comes through trial and error, right?
Absolutely. Well, it's been so much fun. I really am intrigued about the leadership piece that you're now offering. And I can see even in myself where I need to work on those things. So I am excited that you are out there doing that work and offering that to people like me that need that, because I really don't think it's out there enough.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited about it.
So if some of our listeners might fit in with your mastermind, where can they get information about it? Where should they go to find information about you?
Sure. So in terms of the mastermind, we are kicking off June 27th, and it's a 6-month thing. It's a pilot program, so this would be a really good time to get in because I'm offering pilot pricing that I won't be offering again. Okay. And so June 27th till the end of December. So it was really about holding space for the remainder of 2017, because leadership isn't something we learn in a 6-week course, right? It's something we have to get out there and practice and try, all the things I said. So you can find more information about it at bit.ly/Leadership League. Yeah, it's called the Leadership League Mastermind, so it's bit.ly Leadership League. Okay. And then if somebody's not quite ready for that step, there's a couple of other ways we can engage. So I have a new Facebook group called the Leadership League Coffee House, because I can't believe I haven't talked about it, but I am a coffee junkie. I drink a lot of coffee, and that's a huge part of my brand. And so people can request to join. It's for women only, and it's just a space to talk about all of these things that we've been talking about today, about what it really takes to step up as a leader in your business. And you can just go to bit.ly/Leadership Coffee House for that one. Okay. I've got a lot of bit.lys. And then the final one is every Monday I send out a leadership letter. And so this is just a letter from me to you to really give you a behind-the-scenes look at what I'm working on or thinking about as it relates to developing, my own leadership capacity and developing yours. And that one, again, is at bit.ly/Leadership Letters. So Leadership League, Leadership Letters, and Leadership Coffee House.
I love it.
And so 2 of those are free, and then different ways to engage. And then, of course, there is the mastermind.
That sounds great. And what's your favorite social media hangout?
Oh boy. Okay. For engagement, the Facebook, in terms of, especially now that I have this new group. For personally, I'm an Instagram girl. I like just, I use it for that. And then I enjoy reading off of Twitter. So those are the 3 I use. But in terms of how people can connect with me, either on Facebook or Twitter are probably the best thing. And I'm at, Facebook is facebook.com/Stephanie Pollock Inc. And Twitter is Steph_Pollock. But maybe you can put those in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'd love for people to come over and say hello.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. This has been so much fun, and I appreciate your time and your patience with our
Likewise.
But thank you. I'm so glad that it finally worked, that we could get together and do this.
Yeah, likewise. And I just want to give you a shout out to Pepper for what you're creating with the Small Business Sisterhood. I mean, it's a tricky thing when you're starting a new business and you're trying to navigate all of what comes with that. And if you can be part of a community around that really makes a huge difference, because there are people that get the challenges you're facing, especially if you're doing it online and your family are like, what are you doing again? Say what? So I think the work you're doing is really important. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that a lot. There's a lot to building business, and I think it takes us all, and there's space for all of us. So I love that we're all doing what we can to support each other. So thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Pepper.
Thank you, Stephanie, for talking with us today. You can find out more information about Stephanie and the link to her website and the show notes for this episode at smallbusinesssisterhood.com/16. I hope you found this episode useful and inspiring. If you did, please pop over to iTunes and leave a review. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.